right, it's now 11 minutes after 7, time for The Way It Is, where we weigh in on what's happening. And today we'd like to focus on the Devolution Conference that begins today in Kakamega County. And let me start off by engaging and bringing in one of our guests this morning, who is at our town studio, our city center studio, and that is Murang'a Senator Honorable Irungu Kang'ata. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Now, the first phase of devolution is over. Since its inception, the devolved system of governance has had mixed fortunes. It has been a tough journey. Governors fighting all manner of wars, and as the fifth conference kicks off in Kakamega, we want to just have that discussion. Is devolution working? What are the bottlenecks? In studio, I have William Owuya, a governance expert. At our city center studio, we have Honorable Irungu Kang'ata, and Kisumu, we have Mandera Governor Ali Roba, who will be joining us later on. But let me start with Honorable Irungu Kang'ata, who is at our city center studio. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us. First of all, let's just start with your thoughts on the gains that we have made as a country when it comes to devolution 5 years on.
Well, thank you. First and foremost, let me say it has been a successful journey. We have seen several roads, for instance, being made. We have seen several dispensaries being made. We now know that people in far-flung areas can access things which were only in their wildest dreams. For instance, better health care. We now know, for instance, several hospitals are being built. A good example is Kakamega, where we are going. I was there. I saw a 6 billion hospital being built, and I was quite impressed. I have even seen some governors who are tamaking and paving some roads. So to that extent, I think it has been a success generally.
One of the key reasons or gains that the country was expecting to have is resources devolved and brought closer to the people. Do you think that devolution has done that so far? There are those who go with the narrative that all we've done is devolve corruption.
First and foremost, the argument of corruption is a constant factor. That is, even if you centralize resources, we'll have a situation where some people are still stealing at the center. So therefore, the issue of corruption, from where I see it, yes, we have to tackle it, but it's neither here or there. It should be used to negate the whole idea of devolving resources. Be that as it may, I belong to the school of thought we are yet to decentralize all our functions, all our services. And therefore, you have a situation where in some regions, some wards have been discriminated. Money is not really percolating to the grassroots. No wonder I have proposed a new bill which is trying to effectuate Article 176 of the Constitution, which provides that you need to decentralize further services. We have a situation where, for instance, I'm just going to give an example, that when you take money to Turkana, the money does not go to all wards, or it gets stuck at the, let's say, county headquarters, or even, let's say, Kiambu. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that is the situation in Kiambu, but you may find situations where the money is stuck in Kiambu, so that, and therefore you don't have resources percolating, for instance, in Kino, in, let's say, in the far-flung villages in Kiambu. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that is what's happening in Kiambu. So therefore, I think we need to decentralize further. No wonder I've made that proposal. That is, we decentralize resources further. But from when you look at the average, I think to me it has been a positive journey, notwithstanding corruption. I think the agencies which have been bestowed with the duty to fight corruption need also to devolve also.
Right, and let's maybe take a look at your bill a little bit and find out, first of all, it sounds like a good bill on paper, because decentralizing ideally would ensure that the funds are utilized and used by the people who need them, because they know what they need them for at best. But why do you think it's facing resistance?
Well, the rationale of the bill is very simple. Yes, after 5 years of devolution, we have seen what we call a governor-led model of development, which is good because under the Constitution, the executive ought to be the driver of development. But on the other hand, we say no man is an island, no man stands alone. you may need to have more players. You may need to get more ideas. And therefore, you come up with a structure where you have people who are elected from the grassroots, public participation, who then enter into committees, which committees then give out priority as to which projects needs to be done at the ward level. And what I'm proposing is only 8% of the money that is devolved, which is very little. If you were to take, for instance, the last county revenue allocation structure, you'll see it's only about 20 billion out of about 320 billion, which has been devolved in that financial year. So therefore, it's a very small proportion of the entire budget. And once that happens, then you divide that amount amongst the wards in your counties. And then from there, you'll have a situation where that money is being employed to address issues like small bridges, things like roads which cannot be accessed, things like street lighting, those small projects which may as well be needed at the grassroots level. What is the role of an MCA? I have taken into account various judgments by the Court of Appeal and also High Court on the issue of CDF, and therefore we have not proposed MCAs to become direct implementers or executors of those projects. Their work is only to oversight. For instance, when you propose names into those committees, you have to take those names before the assembly for vetting. Also, for instance, if you are going to remove anyone who is going to be in that committee, you can file a petition before the assembly to remove a person in that committee. And again, remember, in that bill, the people who are going to do the implementation, the actual implementation, are people who are directly sitting in the realm of the executive. That is the CEC in charge of finance. And by the way, I'm aware there are several governors who have commenced this system before. For instance, in Meru, they have such kind of a framework, but they are supporting my idea, those governors, on the argument that they would want a legal framework that is going to assist them to be able to come up with this mechanism. So therefore, it is not something that is being opposed by the governors. I was there when we had public participation here in the Senate. COG, or Council of Governors, did not oppose that idea. They did not oppose. That's why we are somehow surprised to see the National Treasury opposing it, whereas this money has nothing to do with the National Treasury.
And Irungu Kangata, I'll come back to you in just a bit, but allow me now to engage Owuya Opondo, who's a governance expert with me here in studio. And you've heard what the good senator has to say and the gains that he has highlighted, roads, dispensaries, and all that. I'm not sure that's the same story that we'd have from the ground. Your thoughts so far?
Thank you. I have listened to Senator Kangata very carefully. And it is always good news when we hear funds are going to the roots, so to speak, to the grassroots. And it's a great idea. I've listened to it, very, very great idea. I've interacted with counties all over this country. However, there are a few misgivings. I listened also to the National Treasury because we have this assumption that there are resources coming from the center and that we can decide how much we want and how we want to. Already, my take is that we already have issues with the national government, CDF, that have not been resolved. We are already pushing to have so much resources going, even having the infrastructure in place for absorption. The idea is great. Honorable Kangata's idea is very great. But I think we need to pause first and answer a few questions about, do we have the infrastructure for absorption? What are the teething issues that are already there that we need to resolve first?
And what are some of those teething issues that you possibly would foresee as should be sorted out before that is implemented? We
need to have clear policies in terms of the implementers. Because the proposed bill is suggesting that we have about 15 million going to each ward. As a legislative analyst, I'm also asking myself, then, what is the role of members of the county assembly in budget making? This is not a discussion we discuss, we enter into without discussing the other aspect of the budget process. Do we need to answer the following questions. Do MCAs have a role in the budget process? If the answer is yes, how have they played this role? Number one. Number two, remember when we talk of the county government, there is the assumption that all of us think of the governors. The county government is a two-sum institution. We have the county executive, and then there's the county assembly. Any reading of the county government as only looking at the governors fails from the beginning to the end. That every area where we have the county government, we should also be thinking of the county assembly. So then if MCAs have a role in the budget process, and it goes all the way back, right from what do governors do first when they come to the office? We have to tell Kenyans that there's a document that must be produced. It's called the CIDP, the County Integrated Development Plan. It is the plan that tells people where are we going in the next 5 years? What are our main areas where we're going to devote resources? And then in these plans, we also have, these are 5-year plans. Then you also have the 10-year plans that are revised every 5 years. These are like spatial plans, sectoral plans. Where, in which sectors do you want to devote resources? We keep on renewing them every financial year. The whole aspect of budget making is so complicated. And I think Honorable Kangata's bill, if you ask me, goes back to address the kind of fears that MCAs have been having. Namely, that it's been said that some governors have been using the old style meaning of the budget to reward cronyism and political patronage. And therefore, MCAs who are constantly opposing or raising questions about how they operate, therefore are denied their areas, their wards are denied development funds. It's an argument that we need to be very open about.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, and allow me now to bring in Governor Ali Roba, who is in Kisumu, just to weigh in on this. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. First of all, just to get your expectations of the Devolution Conference. Registration begins today, but tomorrow, I guess we're going to be hearing more on what the county governments have gained. But your thoughts and what your expectations are of the conference.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Our expectation as county governments, as we have served 5 years of devolution and now moving into the second term of devolution, which is the second 5-year term, our main expectation is sharing experiences. We've discussed at the Council of Governors level in order to make sure that devolution conferences turn into sharing experiences. And this year we'll put a lot of weight in probably touching on all the sectors. But subsequent years, devolution will be sector-based. Devolution conference will be sector-based, where we are going to have sharing health success experiences and where we bring in all the stakeholders, not only from within the country, but across the globe. And we move into agriculture the following year and livestock the other year and such other issues so that we're able to make sure that we have maximum sharing of experience of best practices, not only from within this country, but across the globe.
Governor of Mandera, I know Mandera County is one of those that possibly has been highlighted for some of the things that you've had gains. What are some of the key gains that you'd say you have seen Mandera has gained from the devolved county?
Well, thank you very much. Actually, it's if you wanted to see the true meaning of devolution success, you just have to go to these ASAL counties. Because the difference is like night changing today in virtually every sector, because 50 years of independence, these ASAL counties have not received any meaningful resources from the national government going to this sector. owing to session of paper number 10 of 1965, that literally, I identified these ASAL counties as good for nothing, basically. What is happening with devolution right now is virtually every sector is receiving transformative changes, starting from healthcare sector. If I take, for example, Mandera County, the healthcare sector was possibly the worst performing in this country. If you take an example, we inherited 152 health facilities, out of which only 10% were operational at less than 10% capacity. The total healthcare personnel that we inherited was 153, which is not even enough to run Mandera Referral Hospital. We didn't have any ambulance services at all. We also received the worst maternal mortality rate across the globe, standing at 3,795 deaths per 100,000 live births. What we've embarked on after devolution in the healthcare sector is to start turning around this by addressing all the critical components. We operationalized the entire 52 health facilities and constructed 63 new health facilities, out of which 4 are level 3 hospitals, and upgraded 2 of the major referral hospitals, which is Elwak and Mandera. We also increased our healthcare personnel by about 530%, from 152 to 833 skilled healthcare workers. Medical referrals have been improved also. Now we have 14 ambulances operating for free across the 7 sub-counties in Mandera. And we have 18 maternity centers strategically positioned to make sure that women deliver, in the nearest hospital facility as we are. We've managed to reduce the maternal health indicators from 3,795 deaths per 100,000 live births to 588, which is still above the national average, but at least more than 500% improvement in terms of bringing it down, and the journey is on. If you look at agriculture, Riverdale was taken over by Madenge plants, and today we have 4,600 hectares of irrigation along Riverdale that is producing surplus in terms of certain components like watermelons, onions, lemons, and that we are taking to Nairobi and Addis, from which is neighboring in our area. And this, in terms of water security, the water sector was extremely bad. Virtually every year before devolution, our counties were characterized by mass death of livestock. And now what we have is 5 years into devolution, we've not managed to see mass death of livestock as it used to happen because of intervention. And as a governor, I've discovered that
allow me to interrupt,
not because
Governor.
of lack of pasture, but
sorry, allow me to interrupt. And those are quite a number of gains that you've mentioned there. But certainly there must be challenges that you wish you had done better in those 5 years. What are those? And secondly, there's the issue of security, which of course Mandera has had a big problem with, and whether that has necessarily improved before we get to education.
Okay, thank you very much. One, challenges are immense. To start with, managing expectations, because the population's expectation is extremely high. Again, it's limited resources that come in, and despite doing so much, you'll always have the challenge of trying to manage expectations. 2, even though we want to fly, there are other enablers of development, such as infrastructure. Mandera is not connected to the national road network. We are not connected to national electricity grid. We are still operating using diesel generators, which is about 1.5 megawatts, which is not even sufficient for lighting purposes in Mandera town. And we've turned away more than 7 critical industrialization investment by private sector owing to lack of sufficient electricity for this to thrive. And also the insecurity challenges. Because of our close proximity to Somalia, we've suffered extensive security challenges in our county. I myself, 7 attempts happened against my life. 2 out of those 7 had led to very serious fatalities. And we've partnered in the area of security with, the national government. The president and deputy president have been extremely supportive. And we've managed to really address, the 2013 to 2015, we suffered on average 209 terror incidences in Mandera. But between 2016 and 2018, in Mandera town, and I'm talking about Mandera town only, we've suffered 0 terror incidences because of intervention that has happened. And that is from an average of literally 9 terror incidences per month to 0 terror incidences as at now over the last 2.5 years. Of course, overall, the security has tremendously improved. But the challenge of terror is still there as long as we remain closely bordered with Somalia, which unfortunately we cannot move Mandera from where it is. We'll remain closely bordered with Somalia. And as long as Somalia has security challenges, we are bound to bear a bit of brunt of that spillover of these challenges in Mandera. So overall, there's tremendous improvement in security, but the challenges are still real and it's there. And that, of course, has also contributed to the tag of Mandera being looked at as insecure, and particularly attracting key professional, cadre of employees has been a bit of a challenge. But we are adapting, by making sure we sponsor and train our own in order to cushion the county from what happens in terms of, the terror shocks that normally create a mass exodus of workers like healthcare, education, and such other sectors.
Right, Governor, I'll come back to you in just a bit, but I would like to engage now Senator Irungu Kangata, who is at our City Center studio. Senator, and looking at the theme of the conference is to share experiences. What are your experiences now as after, coming from Member of Parliament to Senator in Murang'a County, and what are some of the challenges that you have seen now in Murang'a County that you possibly would like to be addressed?
Oh, pardon, please. Can you repeat the last limb of your question?
All right. Yes, I was asking some of the challenges that you possibly would like addressed in this conference, given that now you came from Member of Parliament for Kiharu, now you're Senator, you possibly have been able to experience some of the challenges that Murang'a County is experiencing as a devolved unit. What are some of those challenges that you'd want to see addressed?
Let me first start by saying that I happen to be the chair, the co-chair of the Devolution Conference Steering Committee, representing the Senate. And therefore, I do know that, one, we shall not discuss all challenges because we are now focused on what we call the Big Four. That is, the national government currently has a 5-year plan where it wants to implement certain things. And those things happens to be, number one, food security, health care, things like housing, and finally we have what we call manufacturing. So essentially, these are things which are critical to the country, they are specific, and therefore, currently, we shall not discuss all challenges which are facing our counties. Be that as it may, I would propose that, number one, we discuss disbursements of funds. Number 2, we talk of the interlinkages between the state and also what we call devolved units, and also probably also issues concerning corruption. Even if you're talking of the so-called agenda, or agenda big 4 agenda, that is those 4 issues that I've highlighted, we also want a situation where we have timely execution of projects, also disbursements of funds. You have a situation where we allocate money to the devolved units. It takes ages to have that money reach, for instance, Murang'a County. Of course, also, I would have loved also we discuss the issues to do with the formula. We are aware now Commission for Revenue Allocation is about to change the formula, which underpins how we allocate resources to our devolved units. We have currently a certain criteria that gives a lot of credence, number 1, to population. I think, if I'm not wrong, 46%. Then we have what we call the area. It is usually weighted to about 26%. And then you have what we call equitable share. That is a certain percentage that is constant to all counties. And then you also have to take into account poverty rate. So several factors. When you look at that formula, for instance, personally, where I come from in Murang'a, we feel we are somehow oppressed. It's not fair. It somehow disfavors places like Murang'a. Number 1, Murang'a is highly populated. That population is not given the correct weight. I would propose that we add that weight so that probably it comes to about 60%. Because when you talk about development, you are developing people, not rocks or lands. Number 2, also, we have a criteria that's called fiscal prudency. When you look at that, to that criteria, it's quite critical. It looks, for instance, how a county has been able to collect local resources for that year, and then based on the percentage of its ability to hit the target, it is given an incentive that is called fiscal prudence ratio. Yes, I would propose that we expand that criterion to include other things, including how much a county is appearing in auditors' reports, for instance, the absorption rate level. If you are good in absorbing funds, again, you get more marks. So therefore, that I would also propose we also increase that fiscal prudence ratio. It gets very little. I think it's the last one in terms of how much one is able to score and get more funds. But we need to give more incentives to governors who are properly managing county resources. And therefore, I don't know whether we can slot a place in Kakamega to discuss that formula. I think it's important because it affects my county, because we get about 6 billion vis-a-vis other counties which are getting about 10 billion when they have only about a quarter of the Murang'a County population, and therefore we feel somehow disfavored by the current formula, which underpins how we allocate resources to our regions. And again, also, we have what we call equalization fund. Mm-hmm. When you look at equalization fund, I would propose that we look at sub-locations instead of looking at the counties. Because even in Murang'a, for instance, there are sub-locations with a lot of problems, which can be deemed as locations qualifying to get what we call beneficial or the preferential treatment. Okay. And therefore, when you go to sub-locations, you will find even in slums, let's say Nairobi County, in various parameters, scores very well. I think it has the lowest incidence of poverty. I think it's about 16%.
All right,
but we know we have places like
I'll have to pause you a little bit there. Sorry.
Slums. We have Mandera slums. So therefore, when you go to location, those pockets of poverty will come up and they will